Hi, and welcome to the Competent Risk Manager course. Before we start, we'd just like to remind you that this course is designed for people who have completed the standard risk management material that you find in Prince 2 and MSP and those kind of courses. And it's designed for people who want to get up to level 3, which is competent in risk management, and possibly moving towards level 4, proficient or professional, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that's the context of what we're going to cover in these modules, and we're looking forward to working with you. Okay, in this course, we're going to talk a little bit about the structure of what you're going to find over the modules, which is not a repetition of what you've seen on other courses. We're going to be introducing some new concepts and new ideas as we go along to freshen up your thinking or to go into a little bit more depth. Throughout, we've used a case study called the Nightingale Hospital, so you can try to apply your ideas to that scenario, and most importantly, putting it into action. We've given you some exercises which you can try out on your own. Some of them are interactive, some of them you just have to go back and do it in the office. Okay, so we are hoping to push you up to that next level. Before we get into too much detail, we'd like to talk about what is your context. Now, when you get into the course, you'll find that we've created a little utility that enables you to use the P3M3 module on risk to assess your own maturity. Now, this is really important because once you get into doing risk, the environment that you're doing the risk in is really going to be helpful to you, or it will be an obstruction. So if you're in a low level maturity organization, you're going to be pretty much on your own. You're going to have to design everything about how your program is going to work. And actually, I've just mentioned the word program. Throughout the course, we'll refer to program because we are looking to go up the next level. But of course, there's quite a fine line in some people's world between project and program management. So whenever you see program, if you're working in a project environment, just interpret it for you. Okay. So some of the things that we're going to look at on the way through this video, we want to have a little look at the structure of a risk. Really important to think about that aspect of it because we just bandy the word risk around a lot. We interpret it in different ways. We need to have structured thinking on your part to move through this process and to understand how to break down risk and manage it effectively. We're going to have a little look at the governance model and how risk fits together, and a couple of key control documents that you should be aware of when you're setting up your risk environment. So first of all, I'd like to talk about a little thing that I came across in my early days of Aspire Europe. At the time, I was running quite a complex program which involved outsourcing quite a big chunk of people from quite a famous organization, and that in turn carried risks when you start moving people around, obviously, and it carried a range of risks that when I was looking at the risk register felt like there was some duplication going on, but I couldn't quite get to the bottom of it. So I happened to be working on a training course with a wise old owl, and when we got to the risk module, he chose to lead on that module, and he wrote these two words on a flip chart: if and then. And what he actually said was, you can go back and look at your risk register and ask yourself this question: if, then. So look at the risk and say, is it actually meaningful? Now, one of the habits we all have is writing in our risk register a list of things that we hope won't happen. And what I'd looked at on my own risk register was there was a whole bunch of things that I hope wouldn't happen. Yeah, there was trade union resistance, there was strike action potentially, there was customer resistance because they liked the staff that were working from them, they didn't like the idea of them being put out to another organization. So we knew we had some problems in this area. And what I did was I went back and looked at my risk register and actually realized that actually the threat was, if we failed to communicate effectively during this program, then we were going to get customer resistance, union resistance, potentially strike action, and we'd lose the benefits of the program. And by focusing on the threat and then looking at the consequences of that threat, I was able to reduce my risk register from something like 40 odd lines of risk down to about 10. And it is the reality that if you're actually in a program, there are probably about 10 real threats that you're going to face. For example, resource shortages is another common one that you'll face. So getting that idea in your head, if then gives you the threat and the consequences. So if we look at that a little bit further, something like the Piper Alpha incident in the Caribbean, well, that was horrendous incident with the oil rig blowing up. Over 100 people lost their lives and that sort of stuff. That didn't just happen. What happened then was a whole series of threats, events and impacts that led to the point where that rig blew and all the consequences that came after it. The threats were lack of maintenance, poor installations. There were a whole bunch of them building up. And then there was the event. Pressure in one of the valves blew and away it went, and the consequences were horrendous. All right. So we need to remember that actually, as we go through this, it's rarely, in fact, it never is one single risk that's going to take your program down. It's always going to be a combination of them. And during the course, we're going to think about things like cocktail risk, and we're going to think about domino effects, that kind of stuff. And as I'm recording this, we're right in the middle of the global pandemic with COVID. And when you think about that, what was everybody talks about the global risk of a pandemic, but there were so many threats and events that were happening that led to the state we've ended up in 9 months on. So we're going to try and look at that and think about how can you learn lessons from that that help you in your program delivery. So let's think about the risk governance that you're likely to be involved in. When you're running your program, you're probably already, all programs will be part of an organization of some sort. So first of all, we've got to think there is the corporate risk functions that we need to think about. And it is a real common problem that you're looking at programs and they have no connection back to that corporate risk approach. So somewhere this goes missing. So what we've got to look at is how that breaks down. Now, generally, if you're in a well-structured organization, you'll have corporate risk, and then you'll have a portfolio management layer that's looking after the program and project risk, and in effect should be translating program and project risk into corporate risks. And then on the other side of it, you're going to have business risk, so the corporate risk into business operations. I hate this word, but business as usual risk. All right, and that business as usual risk could be looking at the market, it could be looking at everything around the organization, but it tends to be that side of the risk structure is blind to what's going on in the portfolio structure. So if you're looking to set this up, looking at how you join those two together so that program and project risk are looking at the corporate threats and helping to manage them. Equally, the threats that are coming out of program and projects need to find their way through the portfolio, aggregate them up to become part of the corporate risk register. So each stage of this, and during the course, we will kind of think about roles, responsibilities, and that kind of stuff, and how they fit together. Then we want to think about your control documents, and there are basically 3 control documents. If you're setting out on a new program, or if you're taking one on, you should have a risk strategy that sets out how that program will manage its risk and why. All right, so what are the processes that it's going to use? What are the interfaces? What's driving that program? The context. Is it high risk? Is it high pace? Is it highly complex? What is driving that program? Because that is going to need to set out a strategy for dealing with that level of risk profile. So we need to set this out somewhere. These are the things we're going to do. This is how we're going to fit in with the corporate systems. And this is who's responsible for it. Okay? And then we think about the risk register. Now you're going to have a program risk register, and under that you might have various project risk registers. What we don't want to see is a program risk register that's full of project risks. The program risk register is where the translation happens between the portfolio risk and what's happening in the projects. So we need to have criteria for aggregation. We need to have criteria for how do we look across all those different risks going on in the projects and spot the ones that are going to aggregate together. Yeah, think about the Piper Alpha. Which are the threats down in those that's running across your program that could create that chain reaction of events that creates a major problem for the program, and maybe an even bigger problem for the portfolio. And then we got our risk plans. Now we know where the problems are, who's going to intervene, when, and doing what. So are we actually intervening to stop a threat? Are we a countermeasure for the threat? What actions, where are they going to happen? So this is the structure of control documents that you should have in and around your program. Okay, well that's probably enough for me at this stage to setting out the scene for you. Time to get on with your module, and don't forget to do the P3M3 self-assessment on risk, and make sure you do those exercises. It's all about exercises. You've done a lot of the theory up until now in your previous training. Now we want to try and bring it to life. So the more you put into this course, the more you're going to get out.